Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Parenting Tools podcast. My name is Jordan.
And my name is Jason. We are again joining you in your ears to bring you another instalment of the Parenting Tools podcast, the parenting podcast with not many parenting tools.
Mate, that was a lovely intro.
That was all one breath as well.
One breath, one take.
That's what they call me.
One love for the mother's pride.
Don't want to get copyright striked.
Jace, today's episode is a guest episode.
Guest episode. We are joined by John Reynolds.
John Reynolds.
Funny man from TikTok. I'm not sure if he'd agree with that description of just a funny man.
Funny man from TikTok.
But he is funny.
He is funny.
Yeah.
And he posts it on the social media for our enjoyment.
The social medias.
Your wife loves him, doesn't she? She's like a genuine fan.
Yeah. She was buzzing that we got him on.
Yeah. So yeah, look forward to speaking to John in just a few minutes.
I need to open up with one of the funniest stories that I have uncovered.
Really, mate, you've set the bar.
Honestly, I'm not going to name and shame who the people are, but it's my sister-in-law. That's a cheap joke.
That's title and shame.
But this is so funny. I was on holiday last week, and you know when you go on holiday with other people who have kids, you learn some little quirks that they have.
Some nuances,
little fun family traits that go on, just stuff that's a bit odd. And like you don't realise they're odd until you go out with another family. They're like, that's weird.
Yep.
This one I think they knew was weird.
My word.
They got a little boy, beautiful, gorgeous little boy. He's so funny. I think he's turned one. And I'm so tired. Anyway, that's important because he loves playing with his Willy.
Oh my word.
They've had to implement a countdown timer so that he can play with his Willy.
No way.
To stop him playing with it all the time, they're like, you can only play with it after we've done the countdown. And they literally count down from 10.
What do they call this? Is this Willy time?
Willy time.
My word.
Yep. And it's literally like it just would just like constantly play with it. Every time he changes it, he'd constantly just be playing with it. And then now they count down from 10. I'll spare you the 9, 8, 7, 4, 3 up on there. There you go.
I know how it
3,
works.
2, 1. And he's like and I just thought it was hilarious.
If you're not watching this online, go back and watch what Jason just did. Saying that it wasn't an accurate representation.
That was a representation of what my sister-in-law did to tell me the story.
I was going to say, yeah.
That's helpful context.
You've not just had Willy time.
No, I actually haven't witnessed it. I've only heard the stories of it.
Mate.
I wonder, because I don't have a son. I don't know if that's common.
Willy time is not common. I'm going to confidently say that people do not set aside specific time which they count down like some sort of NASA launch to Willy time. How long does it last?
Not long.
Houston, we have a problem. Dear me.
I didn't think to ask like all those sorts of questions. I just thought it was really funny.
It is.
And I just thought
it's odd.
Kids, like if you've got boys as well, it's just a natural thing to do. Not the countdown, but
but my experience of my own boy is not reflective of that.
Without the countdown timer.
No, it's just any of it. I heard a comedian the other day talking. I don't know what his name was, so I can't credit him, but he was brilliant. He was talking about how life with a parent, life as a parent, is you start your day in mystery. He says, like, when you're single, you know how your day's going to start. You know when your alarm's going to go off. You know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, full control.
Yeah, he said, when you are a parent, it's mysterious. You don't know what time you're going to get woken up. You don't know how you're going to get woken up. And he just said that the other day his son woke him up at the door going, look at this. He said, turn the light on. He's just there pulling his Roger. Just see how far it stretches. And he said, this is how my day started at 5:15 in the morning. You just don't know how your day is going to start.
It's so funny. And again, I love a caveat. I have to caveat that story. Apparently, my wife has let me know I have a tendency to J-ify stories, process them through my brain and tell them in a way that didn't happen.
Artistic license.
And so she sent me some examples of a particular story. If you don't remember it, let me just briefly recap. I told a story how my daughter is allergic to egg milk and soy.
Yep.
And we'd given her egg.
Yeah.
And she had a poo explosion in the bed.
Yep.
My bed. And I told the story how I remembered it. That's what my wife has said. I thought I'd clarify a few things after I shared the poo allergy story. Somehow these stories seem to go through the J filter and come out completely different. Usually the differences aren't too bad or they don't matter, but in this case, apparently they need clarifying. And everyone loves being corrected, don't they? So I'm having a really lovely time right now. Number 1 is, all of Noah's allergies have to go through the ladder system, including soya. No idea where Jay got the idea that soy would fix itself.
You definitely said that.
I assumed it would. Number 2, we didn't just decide to feed her egg on a whim. I took her out for the day, and most places are really good with the allergy-free options now, so I didn't take any lunch for her. But this place had no options. I bought a load of snacks and fruit, but Noah didn't want any of that, and she was still hungry. And so she wanted her lunch, which was tuna pasta, which she had 4 bites of. I'm going to say that's turned out worse on you there, Em.
Yeah. You should have planned ahead.
Should have planned ahead. And then thirdly, this one, apparently I didn't say Noah was in pain. She apparently was in lots of pain. And she told us that she was in pain. I just forgot.
Yeah, you literally said, I asked how she was, and she said, feeling great. It's all good. My life.
So, apologies if any of these stories come out incorrectly.
My wife constantly tells me that my stories are incorrect. And I think that's because she hears me tell them to her. She then hears me tell them to my family at like the dinner table. So she hears like different versions. You've got to tailor it.
You can't give it unfiltered story.
The problem is I have with this podcast now is everybody's already heard my anecdotes.
Got nothing else to share.
So we get to a party, everyone's like, what you got going on? I'm like,
it works for me.
Yeah.
I like to just choose the silent option. Oh, what's going on? Just listen to the podcast.
Send someone a link.
How's your week been? There you go.
I'll text it to you. We have had a top tool come in. Top tool. Do you know what? Before we recorded this, I said to Jason, we've got a top tool. Be ready on the top tool. And this is coming from Josie. Josie says, just joining the time or money debate. I offer this to my 4-year-old as rewards. We are trying to get her involved in her own daily responsibilities like making the bed, etc. I then give her a choice if she wants to earn tiny money. I'm assuming that's tiny amounts of money, not... Do you want really tiny money? Like 20p or something. Or 2 minutes staying up late. She always picks time. Also, please do an IKEA down south, as I'd love to come, but I'm on the coast. Yes.
Oh, I'm up for that.
I'm up for that.
Ooh, IKEA, hope you're listening.
Let's get ourselves to the coast.
So I've got a few questions around this.
Go on.
The tiny money one.
I love your questions.
My question was, when I saw tiny money, I assumed like 1 and 2p. That's tiny money.
5.
I mean, yours is
5 pence piece.
Yeah, 5 is the smallest. But
Really small.
But 20p?
Yeah.
Who has ample amounts of 20p's around nowadays?
That's true.
I'm scrambling around for a pound coin for the trolley.
I offered to pay my son money to stay in his bed this morning. So last night I said to him, if you stay in your bed till your clock is yellow, which it never flipping is, I'll give you £1. And he went, like 37p or 50p. And I thought, this has gone very well. So I'll give you 50p. And then, like 5 to 6. Any waltzes. Like, well, you're not earning your money then. That's how desperate we are.
So are we saying that my brain is so underdeveloped, I think like a toddler?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's time over money.
Well, a few weeks ago I said, the clock is working for us now.
Oh, you did?
It's no longer. So he started school, and I am curious about this. So he started school every day And I don't think he realised he went to school every day.
Oh, yeah.
So Thursday and Friday he started, love school. Monday, what are we doing today? Go to school. Oh, again? Like, yeah, you go every day now.
Oh.
I don't think he realised that school was every day. But he loves it. He's enjoying it. He comes home shattered. And I'm thinking, this is going to be good for the sleep. He's, since starting school, wakes up once in the night, which he hasn't done for a long time, and gets up, I'd say, between 5:15 and 5:45. Like, there's been a regression in sleep since school.
Wow.
Which I was thinking, get to school, that solves all our problems.
Yeah, because it'll be shattered.
Yeah, nope, hasn't worked out like that. So yeah, feel like we've taken
I have no advice.
a few backward steps.
Just hope it gets better.
So, well, I'm offering to pay him to stay in his room.
Bribery.
And
What you should
it's
do,
not even bribery, it's just flat out payment.
use payments that he recognises and understands. Chocolate.
He gets money.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh.
So if I'm outside in the garden or something, he'll come, Daddy, can I help you? And I'll be like, yeah, you can help me. And he'll go, oh, I've done lots of good helping. Think I could get £1. So he understands money.
I think that tells me more about you than it does about him.
No, but because he loves Smith's Toy Superstore. It's one of his favourite songs.
Amazing,
is
yeah.
the Smith's Toy Superstore song.
Really?
From last year.
I didn't realise it had a song.
Which, to be fair, is a tune.
It has a song?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
It's a belter. And for all the Christians listening, they repeat the last line 3 times, ending the song. So yeah, he understands money. But enough about money and enough about 50p pieces. It is time to speak to our guest today, John Reynolds.
John Reynolds, you may know him from TikTok or other social media platforms. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Really
George.
looking forward to this one. John is super funny. He's really got that niche down of just capturing what goes on with the kids and conveying it in a funny way.
Oh, I was watching just a little live of him earlier. He's just having a normal life, doing a little TikTok live, and his kids were just screaming and shouting about and debating with them. Loved it.
There you go.
Anyway, here we go. John Reynolds.
So welcome to the podcast, John. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So John, for our listeners that maybe haven't come across you before, just give us a little bit of an introduction. Who are you? What have you got? What does your life look like?
Yeah, so I'm John Reynolds, 34, dad of 2, husband of 1, and got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So a 7-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, and it's a challenge, but it's been good. It's a nice challenge.
And what do you do, like job wise? What how does that look?
So recently I've just started doing content creation full time. So mostly sort of TikTok, but where other social media platforms are like trying to copy it, I chuck my content over onto those as well. Basically, I just record one video and put it up on as many sites as I possibly can and see how it goes. But it's been good. It's only been since March that I've been full time doing that. Before I was a youth pastor for I think 3 different churches since university. And loved that, and was only really on TikTok, to be honest, to keep an eye on what was out there and make sure the youth were not being poisoned. like the youth weren't being like poisoned by the shocking nature of some of the stuff that I'd heard. And then you go on it and you're like, oh, it's mostly just people being silly and funny and stuff. And basically you get more of what you're given. You get more of what you watch on TikTok. So when anyone's like, oh, I really don't like some of the stuff that I keep seeing on my TikTok, I'm like, well, just stop watching that stuff and you'll see less of it. But yeah, that's basically what I do now. So I love being a youth pastor for, I think, over a decade.
Oh, wow.
But now doing TikTok, it feels a bit weird, doesn't? I think people think that ministry sometimes isn't like a proper job. Like, I think if you don't go to church, you sort of think, even a vicar just works on a Sunday. So like, what does a youth pastor do? Like, maybe they just do a few evening stuff. They work on a Sunday and they do a youth club 1 night a week. So I think people's perception was I already didn't have a proper job. Now I do too.
It's quite an easy transition into that sort of new line of work.
Yeah, exactly. It's already just I like the sound of my own voice and hope people will listen, and thankfully they are.
Oh, amazing. I have to say, like, really love your content as well. And like,
thank you.
When my wife found out that we had you as a guest, she was buzzing as well. And I didn't know any of that stuff, like your previous youth pastor. I just thought that's really cool. But just genuinely, your content's just really wholesome and just funny and just like really normal, and that's just really nice.
Thanks very much.
Just huge well done for that. It's just really cool.
You posted a video the other day where you said, I can't remember what the exact wording was, but your son was basically doing an apology video.
Yeah.
Like a disgraced celebrity.
Yeah. So he, a lot of my content is around like my kids and things, because normally my 7-year-old boy is like very angelic, and then my 4-year-old girl's 4-year-old girl, and so like they're very like different. And he'd asked for some like small cherry tomatoes, like just one afternoon. And so I was doing some emails, sat on the other sofa to him, and I'd given him these tomatoes. And at one point I looked over, and it was like carnage. I'd been in the same room as him as well, so a lot of this is on me. But I looked over, and it was mental. Like there was like tomato seeds, like the little bits where he'd basically been squeezing them to make like over a cup, to make like a tomato soup or something, all over the sofa, all over the floor, all over this wall behind us. I think we've mostly got it off.
White
on the
wall.
Ceiling. Like it was one of those things where you worry when you tell a story like that people think, well, it wasn't actually on the ceiling, or you're just saying that to make it fun. It was literally on the ceiling. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, you know, when you've given them something, I don't know, I was only doing emails for a couple of minutes. I looked over, it's madness. And so I did get really cross. And again, one of those moments where you're like, I did shout, and you're like, was it too much? Like, it was like, what are you doing? Like, and I think I couldn't believe that he hadn't realised. And I think retrospectively, he didn't actually realise it. I think he'd been squirting him a bit, but he'd just been focusing on the cups. He then thought about the fact it was just going everywhere. And so I did get quite cross with him. And one of those as well, where I think that, I don't know what you guys are like in your like family dynamic. One of the things my wife and I have realised is we're not very good at de-escalating the situation. So when one of us is caught in the stress, neither of us, whichever one it is that's caught in the stress, the other one never comes in and de-escalates. The other one almost sides. And obviously you don't want to be like, you don't want to be opposing forces. But I think when one of us, we're both really chill, but when one of us goes bad cop, the other one also goes bad cop. Like, one's like, what have you done? So I was going, what have you done? This is ridiculous. And then Jay came in and went, oh my goodness. And then, you know, when it's just like, okay, this has got a bit much now. So I think it did shock him a little bit. Yet at the same time, it's one of those situations where you're like, okay, but I never want him to do anything quite that mad again. So you look there. I worry that sometimes, like, I listen to people speaking or like doing TED Talks or talks in church, and they'll be like talking about, like, we've all got this father wound or whatever. And you're like, oh, Jim, one of those moments where I don't want to get back on. And he's like, whenever anyone shouts, he flinches or whatever. And it's like, I can trace that back to the tomato incident.
Every time he sees a tomato.
Yeah, exactly. He just starts crying. So it was one of those where it did all calm down. And I think, like, I don't think he even cares now. I don't think it really even sunk in that deep. But basically, it was all fine again. We managed to wash off the walls and the ceiling and put the sofa cushions in the washing machine. And the next day, he woke up in the morning. He was like, Daddy, can I play games on your phone? So I was like, yeah, that's fine. I sorted his breakfast, gave him my phone to play a few games on. Then I took him to school, and he'd taken like my phone off, I think, at some point. I was sort of dozing, like half awake, that classic, like, don't want to be one of those parents who gives their kid a screen so they can sleep a little bit more, but I am at times. And so I was just like, I just have my phone, play the games on it. And I hadn't realised where I was half asleep. He'd taken my phone off. And when I thought he was playing games, I came back after dropping him to school, I came back, I was doing some bits on my phone. I saw in my camera roll, there was like this video. I was like, what is this video? And he'd recorded, as you like referenced, this apology video where he was like, I think he's aware. So he's becoming, he sort of knows I do TikTok, and he also watches a fair bit of YouTube, like on the TV. So it just scrolls from one video into the next. And I think, I don't think he's ever seen an apology video. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like a celebrity who like has been attacked by the woke media because of a tweet they put up in 2003 that was like absolutely fine then, but suddenly offensive now. It wasn't like that. It was, but I think he thought, I don't know if he was practicing for a future career or if he genuinely thought that people might see it. He never asked me to post it, and I never told him to do it. But it's really funny. He's holding the phone like way too close, and so the focus is going in and out. So he's like here, like this, like really close to the thing. And he's like, "Hey guys," like speaking to the phone, and he says things like, "Hey guys, you may think that." No, how does he start? It's something like, "Hey guys, I've done something that isn't very good," or something like that. Like I have been squeezing tomatoes, and they went on the sofa, on the wall, on the ceiling, and I'm just really sorry. Like looks at the camera, like really earnest. Like I genuinely,
does.
I'm really sorry, and that's how he ends it. You might think I'm never naughty, but I am a little bit naughty. And that's how he finishes it. And it's like, oh. But what's so funny about the internet, so that then, and again, really weird about social media. I could get super nerdy about it, but like sometimes you'll do a video that does amazing on TikTok. You put it on Instagram, no one really cares. Facebook, no one really cares. YouTube, no one really cares. Every now and then it's the other way around. And sometimes you get ones that rubbish on all of them or great on all of them. But this one did amazing on Instagram, nothing on TikTok. People just didn't really care at all. I still have no idea why, but it did so well on Instagram. I think got 3 million or something like that views. And then I think, I can't remember, is it Independent? I think it was Independent. On their website, so not like anything like on like printed, obviously it wouldn't work. Like a flip book of him apologizing, but like this video on their website. And that had obviously linked. So I think that linked in as well. And then a guy called Brooke Allison, he's a writer for Jimmy Fallon, but a musician. He then picked it up and like songified it. So like he's playing like bass alongside it with like the rhythm. So he's like, on the sofa, on the floor, on the ceiling. It's like, it's unbelievable. Like, and so that it's so weird how like the internet, like because of his apology, I introduce it and explain it. It's quite a short video. You wouldn't know it because I've spent about 45 minutes there. So it's a 90-second video that I'm explaining now in an hour and a half. But like I just put it up, a little bit of an intro, then the thing, and that was it. And then like just sometimes the internet runs with it, and I guess it's relatable, but also it's relatable, but also unique, if that makes any sense at all. Do you know what I mean? I think parents can relate to their kids every now and then just doing things where you're like, why have they done that? Or like acting older than their years, but at the same time, like most kids don't actually record their own apology video. I didn't think ours would. So, yeah.
That's hilarious. I was just imagining like one of those thumbnails with like just fake tears just rolling down.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was really funny when you were saying like when one of you, either you or your wife, you escalate a situation, no one wants to de-escalate it. And like I hadn't thought about that until you'd said it. And it's like I don't want to undermine like what they're doing. Like I don't want to kind of come in as like the fun one, like the fun parent when they're like in a serious moment. And it is this weird little standoff of you just either have to match their energy or just slide like slowly out. Yeah,
definitely like the Homer Simpson back into the bush kind of, because exactly you don't want to come in like the savior parent who's like, and then you end up feeling like you're like parenting your wife and they feel like you say undermined and you're like, guys, I think everyone needs to just calm down in here. Like you never make a mistake. But equally, I'm aware that like, as you say, matching their energy, I think like, especially for kids, I think it's all right if both of your kids are in trouble and then both of you, because otherwise the single parent is like outnumbered. So I feel like when it's like a 2-on-2, it feels a bit fairer. Whereas when there's just one kid cowering in like tomato seeds, you feel a bit guilty.
That's awesome. So how did you get into doing the content creation and the TikTok and stuff?
Yeah, like I think, so when I was at uni, I tried a bit of stand up and a few things like that and like, really enjoyed it and did okay at it. I mean, sometimes you bomb and it's like, it's it's great stand up, but it's unforgiving. Like TikTok is so much easier. If you've got funny stories now and you want to do, and you think if people tell you you've already got funny stories and you like telling them, it's a lot easier on TikTok because when I first started, I would just record it all. And if I messed up, I'd be like, right, start again. And there were only 3 minutes max, but like I'd just do a whole nother take. Whereas now I've realized that most people don't do that. You can edit it, even if suddenly it's like there, and then you're like, you pick up and it's like there, and it's like a sudden jolt. No one cares. They're just too busy listening. Whereas, so you can mess up a line and just literally keep going. But even if you've done a whole bit, just edit the next bit in. With stand up, it's like it's got to be slick. You've got to obviously have like a tight 5 minutes or whatever. But I always enjoyed that. I had a few opportunities to do public speaking at church, became a Christian when I was about 17, 18. And then I was an intern for the church. And a bit of that was like, hey, do you want to lead some church services or do you want to do some of the talks? And so I think I think other people had seen like teaching or upfront or entertaining kind of gifts in me. And so I'd been like, yeah, you should try that. And the more people said that, the more you're like, oh, okay. And then you do it and it's not as terrifying as you thought it was going to be. And you think, okay, I'll keep going. So I'd done a little bit of that. And then through like being a youth pastor, had spoken a fair bit in churches. I think by the time it came to then telling stories online, I felt like, I mean, firstly, you haven't got an audience. So if that kind of thing terrifies you, I'm all right with that now. It used to terrify me, but I've done enough of it to not be too nervous. But I think if you're the kind of person who likes telling stories but doesn't like the audience, so online's perfect for that anyway. But I think also because I felt like I had grown in confidence and also like ability in that area, I think it was relatively natural for me. But I never set out to do it. I basically was just using social media like everyone else, just updating like my mum and about 7 friends or whatever. And I told a story on Instagram. Basically, my Elijah came home from church one day and he was like, Daddy, I want to be an author. And I was like, okay, like what's an author? Because I thought, I don't even think he knows what it means. It's about 2 years ago or about 18 months ago. And he was like, someone who writes books. So I was like, oh, okay, like he does know. And I was like, well, what are you going to write? And he went, can I have a pen and paper? So I was like, yeah, sure. And so he starts writing this thing. And every time I went over, again, this is one of these difficult things of being a parent. Sometimes you want to constantly check in on them, not even in are they squeezing tomatoes everywhere kind of way, but just, are they doing okay? Do they need my help? Do they want to even chat it through with me? Sometimes they really want to collaborate on their little things. And other times they're like so secretive. It's like, is he writing a story or is he writing a like plot to kill us kill all the family or something? Because he was like that. Every time I went, I was like, Daddy, go away. And I was like, okay, why is this story so secretive? He's like, I'll show you at the end. Fine. And when it came to it at the end, he's a lot better now. I mean, he's still only 7, but he was about 5 at the time. He was still doing his D's as B's and like he didn't know how to spell loads of words. So a lot of it was just totally ineligible. I had no idea what was going on. It started off like once upon Tim. Cinderella was spelt with an S, like she'd been really bad or something. And I was like, I just had no idea like what this is. And I was like, okay, first of all, it's Cinderella. So like, you're not going to make a career as an author if you're just plagiarizing someone else's work. But I let him off. And so as it went on, the first line was fine. It suddenly was like waves of the ocean, like the lines, I couldn't read it. The D's were B's. It was all, there was no spaces in between. It was like reading the name of like an antibiotic or something. I had no idea. And it was just one long word that snaked over 1 million lines. But he was getting so cross. I was like, sorry, darling, what does this bit say? Oh, Daddy, it says mirror, mirror on the wall. So okay, fine, yeah. And like it got to the point where he had to basically tell me what the whole thing said. And he was getting progressively crosser and crosser. My wife is in the room next door and she could overhear the whole thing. So right as he gets to the end, he's like, they lived happily ever after, the end. And he snatched it off me. So, Daddy, I'm going to take it to Mummy. Now, Mummy's in the room next door. She's heard the whole thing now. So he can then read it perfectly. After she finishes reading it perfectly, he comes back into me, like so smug. Like comes back into me like, Daddy, Mummy is a much better reader than you. And then he goes, like a teacher, like a patronizing teacher to a child, you really do need to work on your reading. Like, I'm like 34, like I can't read. So, like, the fault was my end. So I told that on my Instagram story, and I think I had about 900 followers at a time, friends, family, etc. But I got about 15 DMs on my Instagram story, like, this is hilarious or whatever, or this is really funny. And so I was like, okay, like, you know it's funny when it happens, and obviously you tell it hoping it'll make people laugh. But before then, if I didn't really put many stories up, but if I did, you know, I mean, get 4 people be like, ha, and stuff, and you'd be like, oh, cool, fine. And so I was like, that's quite a good hit rate. And so I just thought, I'll put it on TikTok. I've got a TikTok. I barely post anything, but I'll whack it up on there. It got like 50,000 views, and I was like, flipping heck. And I went from having like 200 followers or so on there to about 4,000 or 5,000. And I was like, this is now like the platform I'm followed the most on. And then I was like, I may as well just keep sharing stories and things, like, see how it goes. And I think about a month after that, I shared the story of my first date with my wife, who's a wheelchair user. And I won't tell the whole story of that, but basically we went to the cinema and there were steps, like, as we got to the front, and I was like, oh, flip. And basically there was just a whole issue with, there was no lift in the building. It was like a listed building. So on our first date, I had to carry her up like 40 steps. And it was that tension of like, I don't want her, like, she's never been heavy, but at the same time, 40 steps. And so I don't want her to think I'm weak, but I also don't want her to think she's heavy on a first date. So I'm like, I don't want her to feel insecure, but I also don't want her to be like, flipping it, get to the gym, mate. Like, and so, like, you're trying to impress, and like initially picking up, I was like, oh, that's all right. But then as you get, it's like we've got Morrison's not far down the road from us, and I'm like, it's walkable easily. But if you do a big shop, you're almost weighing up how much shopping can I carry home before it's like, why didn't I just drive? And like, it was a bit like that, where I was like, initially picked her up and like, this is fine. And then I realized, like, a bit like Morrison's, I'm like, still 5 minutes from home and I'm struggling. I'm like putting shopping down and taking a break. And it's like that as I carried up the steps. I got to the top of the steps, and as well, there's like a whole aisle down to, like, I think we were screen 1. So you've got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. I was like, flipping egg. And so basically I told this whole story, and I think because I captioned it like my first date with a wheelchair user, and then I thought, I've got to put spoiler, I married her. I mostly put that just because I didn't want people thinking like, oh gosh, do you know, my first date with a wheelchair user, she's horrible. And it's like, just feels ableist, even if it's not. Like, you feel like you have to spend the whole time being like, it wasn't because she was in a wheelchair that we didn't end up going on a second date. So I thought, I'll just make everyone feel safe by being like, we got married. What I didn't realize how much people, like, I think I put that up so people felt safe, but I think it's probably one of the big reasons why it did so well, because then I think people are like, it's a bit How I Met Your Mother, isn't it? It's a bit like your first date with the woman that you'll go on to marry, as well as the added intrigue of her being paralyzed, but equally it being a funny story in and of itself, and an interesting one. That got about 2 million. And I think I don't know what time of the day I put it up. It was just crazy because, like, I mean, even now I'm happy if a video gets 1 million, but at the time, like, it was absolutely mind blowing. Like, I put it up, I think, in the afternoon, and as we were going to bed, I was like, it's on like 400,000. Like, and every time I looked at my phone half an hour later, I was like, it's on like 470,000. And like, I woke up and it was on 1 million. I remember saying to Jade, like, it's mental. And I went from, again, then I think I was on about 10 or 15K by then. And suddenly it was like 70, 80,000. And to be honest, I think it's just all chance, really. Like, I put up videos now that I think, like, this is a good one, and it gets nothing. Like, and if that had happened with the story about Elijah, or even this story, I wouldn't be doing it now. Sometimes you are a bit of a slave to the algorithm. I see some creators on TikTok, and I'm like, I watch a video, it's hilarious. You go on their page, you watch another couple, it's brilliant, and you're like, how have they only got a few thousand followers? And then there's some people like, and they've got like 17 million, and you're like, what? Like, and so it's not always a meritocracy, I don't think, but at the same time, like, yeah, normally the best ones do well and the ones that aren't so good don't, and things. But yeah, it's all just very surreal, to be honest, but a fun ride, and we're just doing our best to keep going with it.
Yeah. So it was a natural thing, just came along, and you're riding the wave, which is awesome. You mentioned there that your wife's a wheelchair user.
Yeah.
How does that look in terms of parenting? Because
yeah,
my wife and I were both able-bodied, and we spend a lot of time chasing our kids around.
Yeah.
And just trying to gather them up.
Yeah, exactly.
How does it work for you, and how, what are the challenges that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I think being a youth pastor when we first had our kids, it was nice to have a flexible job, as in I could be home in the afternoon. A lot of the time my hours were kind of mornings and evenings. So I could come home just after lunch maybe and like help out and things. And I think even it's a relatively flexible job. The church like mostly nice people, so they're pretty understanding. It wasn't a kind of 9 to 5 and I was like had an hour commute or whatever. So we live quite close. They were quite understanding if I needed to pop back for things or help out. Pretty much most things are okay for Jade, but there were challenges. Our kids are 4 and 7 now, so it's so much easier. Like she can go up to the park with them herself very easily, and I'm not sort of stressed at all. I think there are attachments for like push chairs to wheelchairs, but we struggled to find them at the time. And I think like it's basically things like that. It's quite hard to wheel yourself and push something at the same time. So there's a few things like that. At one point, excuse me. At one point, I remember being at work, and Jade was home with Elijah, who he wasn't unwell, but it's just the classic like baby sick. But he was, I think she was like, she just fed him over the shoulder. He was sick all down her back, but then also all over the floor. And she then realised that he'd been sick basically in the doorway between the living room and the kitchen. So she was like, in order to go to the kitchen and get stuff to clean up the floor, I got to wheel through all this sick and then wheel it into the kitchen. And it was like just a bit of a nightmare. And so I think like if you're able-bodied, like your kids they've really got to set a kind of Guinness World Record for vom for you to have to step in it. Most of the time you can step over it. Like
jump over it.
Even if you've got to do a run up and a jump, you're probably going to clear it, even if they've absolutely emptied their guts. But like in a wheelchair, like it's pretty hard to hop something. And so she was like, when it's in that area, it's just a nightmare for her. So I think a lot of time it's just things like that where you wouldn't necessarily think of it. One time I was went to an evening service at our church, and Jade called me, and I was like, she knows I'm at work. Like, why has she called me? And so I just sort of ignored it. Like it's on silent, but it's like, and I was like, flipping heck. Then she called me again. I was like, okay. Like she was at home alone with Elijah. I think it was about 6 months maybe. And I nipped out of like the main sanctuary. I was like, what's the matter? And she was like, I can't remember why. I think I basically moved the wheelchair too far from the sofa so she couldn't reach her chair. So she was laying on the sofa with Elijah, but her wheelchair was out of reach. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I was only 10 minutes away, but I had to run back. And I don't even know, it's very rare it happens. I can't remember what I don't know if I was fixing something on it or what was happening, but like it was about 2 meters away from her, 3 meters, she just couldn't reach it. So I think things like that are just so rare for anybody else. Like, so I think mostly it's that she was really unwell when we first had Elijah, and things. We weren't sure if it was a pressure sore or what it was, but top of like her leg, she was on bed rest for about a year. So that was mental, like where she was just having to lay down. So that was really challenging. And I think a lot of it, everyone's disability is as unique as their fingerprint and things. And so you can't generalize too much, even for like people with the same disability, even for 2 paraplegics, it will look different. Sometimes you can feel at different levels and all that kind of stuff. But part of paraplegia is you've got lower energy levels. Like it isn't just you can't walk. Sometimes you can't regulate your body temperature. There's a few things that come with it. And most of the time they're not, obviously what's debilitating is the spinal cord injury, not those things, but they do add extra things for you to kind of navigate and think about. And I think even the extra tiredness, I think, had an impact on me, because you're shattered anyway. Like, I think every single couple plays the game of like who's the most tired and things, like, and sort of trying not to be competitive, but at the same time you're like, well, I did get up with them this morning, and I have been at work, and that's not to say that you don't work around the house. Like, if she was working from home, and like, it's not to say having the kids isn't hard and things like, but I think like that was an added level where I think, particularly then when she was on bed rest, I think a lot of it is just having to be aware of so much more. And I'm not very strong with admin or organization, and I think like I've had to like learn that. Found out recently I've got ADHD, and I think I've gone ages without knowing that, and that's obviously one of the reasons why. And so I think like navigating all of that stuff is interesting, but I think like every situation is just their situation. It's all relative, isn't it? Like, there'll be people who are able-bodied who find parenting even harder than us. There are people that find it much easier. People who I think people can look at us a little bit like maybe we look at having 2 kids with people who have got more than 2 or more than 3 or 4, and like, you know, you have people who have got like 7 kids, and they're like, I literally do not know. We struggled with 1, and then the step up from 1 to 2 felt like we suddenly like had a litter and things, and so you're like, this is mad. Like,
oh, that's giving me hope.
Yeah. So then when it goes up to like like more than that, like, but again, it's all relative. I think once you're used to, you speak to people with 6 or 7 kids, and they're like, it's fine, I just whack an extra few chicken nuggets in, like, and you're like, that can't be the extent of the difference between.
They look after each other.
yeah, exactly. And I guess it's true. There's enough of a gap in between. How many kids have you guys got, by the way?
I've got 2. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay.
And I've just got 1, a 3-year-old. But we're very much in the debates of a second, and that's like, I noticed your gap. Is it a 3-year gap?
Yeah, almost exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so my daughter's 3, and we're kind of going, have we waited too long? Is it now going to be even more difficult? Like, do we want to go back to having no sleep?
It's such a I think it's pick your poison, which sounds so hopeful. Like,
no, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
When they're close together, they probably squabble a little bit more. Like, and I still think 3 years, probably 3 years is like the maximum, or maybe 4 maximum being close together. I think after that, you start feeling like there is quite a difference, maybe. Like, I think obviously when it's like, some people it's like less than a year, and you're like, fair play. I mean, even physically, like how?
Physically, how?
I don't think my wife would let me touch her for about a year after she had Elijah. But like, I think there's an element of like, even when it's like 18 months, 2 years or something, they are pretty close. And I think like they're more likely to argue and fight, but they do also, ours play quite a lot together sometimes. And sometimes it'll be like, how can you not go 5 minutes without arguing? And other times it's like, are the kids okay? Because I think they've just been playing for like 2 hours, and you go through and they're like being so sweet, and you're like, this is amazing. And so I've got my brother's 2.5 years younger, and then I've got a sister who's 7 years younger, and Jade's got a sister who's 9 years younger. So in terms of like the big gaps, I've kind of got a small and a big. And it's just different. Like, I think to some degree, you know better what you're doing. And I think if there is a big gap, you don't have the same. A 7-year-old, 9-year-old, they can almost crack on. Like, you've almost finished with them by then, haven't you? You've almost done your job. Why are you still living it? But like, they can crack on. There is an element, like, by the time Jade was like 13, 14, her sister's 5, she could babysit and stuff. And so you've got that element when there's a bigger gap. But there is that kind of pressing the reset button, and suddenly, I think you do forget. But also, I don't know how you found it with the 2 close together, but the first, we'd nap when you have the first one, you nap when they nap, especially when you're on paternity leave or whatever, if you're not working as well. But like, when you've got 2 or 3 years apart, and the 2 or 3-year-old is around, like, you get the baby down and you're trying to keep them quiet, but also you can't nap when the other one, when the baby naps, because they're then awake. So swings and roundabouts, I think. Like, we quite like the gap, but yeah.
Carnage. It was carnage. It was absolute chaos. But like you said, we just have these moments they're just so wonderful together.
Yeah.
But then also it's like toys break because they are both so determined to not let go.
Yeah.
And it just breaks in the middle.
Yeah. It's like right, you've got half each now. Like,
Yeah.
it's like a story. It's like Solomon or whatever is in the Bible. He's like chopping the baby in half for the women. It's like, I'll just wheel that out as a youth pastor. Like, let me tell you a story about why this isn't a good idea.
That's a really good little segue. So I'm a pastor at the moment as well. One of the things that I've got like in my head at the moment is I really don't want to like indoctrinate my children or my daughter. I don't want to just like, this is what I believe in, so that is all that you must know.
Yeah.
Obviously faith's a big part of my life, but by your stories that is a big part of yours. How do you navigate like faith and parenting? Does it impact a lot? Do you think about it a lot?
Yeah, I think it's a question I'm asked quite a lot on social media as well, like particularly if I do like a live. So every now and then I do a TikTok live and people are like, what would you do if your kids grew up and they didn't want to be a Christian? I'm like, I'll never speak to them again. Next question. No, I don't. I'm like, what, son? It's interesting that people, that the way I kind of, like, I think we'll do a few things. Like, so they go to church obviously with us. It's not supposed to leave them on their own, apparently.
True.
And so like they'll come along with us, and people ask as well, like, what if they don't want to come at a certain age when you could leave them on their own? And I think we're still working that out. Like, I think it depends depends what they're up to. Depends how young as well. Like, I don't know how long they'll be living with us. On the one hand, I'm like, if you're under my roof, it's my rules kind of logic. But you're like, if they're 29 or still at home, kind of can't feel like, yes, you are coming to church, young man, or you're out. Like, and so I think for us, we'll talk. Elijah really loves just watching like Veggie Tales, which is like a YouTube,
classic.
It's pre-YouTube, but like classic. Like, anyone listening to this who's not a Christian, it's brilliant. It's quite weird. It's basically it's talking fruit and vegetables that tell Bible stories, because the Bible's not weird enough. But it's really good, to be fair. There's like funny songs in it and stuff, and it's really good. And he loves that, and he loves watching. There's a few churches that have done some really good like kids Bible stories, and every now and then we actually like get a book out and read with him as well. But like, it's just so easy, and he really enjoys it. He's Arily, our 4-year-old, less so far. We tend to do it with him right before bed, and he goes to bed a little bit later. So we'll read a story with her, and we have got like a Bible story book that we'll do with her sometimes, but depends what she requests. We'll try and sort of lead it that way. I just feel like there's more life lessons in that than like a Peppa Pig sound effects book that I'm so close to taking the batteries out of or burning. But like, I think we'll do story time or like Bibles with them in the evening. And we end the day with Elijah, and sometimes with Arily as well. Soon it will be with her too. With one, let's talk about our day. So we always do one good thing, one bad thing, and then we pray about something. And that's been quite a nice way of like, I don't know how you guys find it. Obviously, with yours being a little bit younger, especially like 2, 3, obviously they're talking, but they're probably not being like, here's a blow-by-blow account of my day. Like, I mean, my 7-year-old doesn't even want to do that sometimes, but you ask them after school or nursery and they're like, yeah, it's fine. But then right before bed, they're like, let me tell you everything that I've ever done.
All comes out.
And so that's one of the reasons why initially we made it one good thing, one bad thing to try and get something out of them. Anything, and now it's one good thing, one bad thing, so we try and stick to only one, so he's not like going to bed at like midnight. And so but that's been a really nice way of doing it, and I think it also helps us. Obviously we're not too vulnerable with them, but like, I think leading by example with stuff, like, I think it's good for kids to know that we're not perfect. Good for us to every now and then we'll say sorry, like in our prayers, also to their face if it's them we've wronged, not just passively aggressively through the Lord. And also, Jesus, I'm really sorry for shouting at Elijah. But like, I think so we will do that. But also asking God for things, like thanking God, and trying to sort of model I guess faith on some level. But it's not, I think, like almost every Christian I know, like, I think before I was a Christian, I don't know how I imagined Christian families. I was about 17, 18, I think I said, when I became a Christian. I just thought church would be really boring and weird. And most people would be at least 85 and probably not smell very nice. I think I've been to church and had a lot of coffee breath in my face and things, like when I've been part of like C of E schools and stuff. And then I went to church and I was like, most of these people are really nice. They're a bit like me, but a lot nicer than I am. And like they seem a lot more happy and chilled and peaceful. And so it was one of the reasons like I stuck around, I think, because I was like, I feel like they've got something that I quite admire and would love to be a bit more like. But I think like my perception of maybe Christian families was that, I don't know, it'd be like Little House on the Prairie, or every prayer time you'd all like hold hands, and every like meal time you'd hold hands and pray and things. And like we do pray. We don't pray before every meal. Probably be nice to, but we should sort of save that. We pretend we do when guests are around and that kind of thing. When it's Christian guests, should someone want to say grace? And then every other time we're like, are you going to eat your food? Shut up. But so I think basically what I'm trying to say is I think we're just very normal, but I just believe that God is real, and therefore when people ask me what would you be sad if your kids weren't Christians, I would be, but not in the same way. I'm a Spurs fan, not in the same way I would be if Elijah didn't support Tottenham, because that's an opinion, and it's not fundamental reality. Like every football fan sings like that their team is by far the greatest team the world has ever seen and things. And like, but that's not true for every club. Like, and it couldn't be. Whereas there either is
especially
a God.
Spurs.
Yeah, especially Spurs. Yeah, exactly. We haven't won anything for us for a long, long time. But like with God, I think like either he is real or he's not. And I believe like passionately he is. And so it's not a kind of opinion thing where it's like, what if your son grows up and he's an Arsenal fan? Actually, that would be nearly as bad as him not being a Christian if he supported Arsenal. But if he didn't support Spurs, but it was a different club, well, fine. But if he wasn't a Christian, it's still his choice. But for me, I'm trying to raise them in accordance with what I believe reality is. And I just believe it's true that there's a God. And so whilst I'm humble enough to know that I might be wrong about that, and I'm sure even if I'm right about it, there's some things that I believe about my faith that I've not quite understood properly, I haven't got the perfect picture, I would be really sad for any of my kids to step out of what I perceive to be reality. And that's what I feel if he wasn't a Christian or if she wasn't a Christian. And so I think one of the big things that we do in our family is like I can't remember who I heard talking about it, but like why is so much more important than what, like why you believe, and knowing why you believe what you believe. Because like, and I think that's what we want to, I think that's true for anyone listening to this, by the way, like regardless of whether it's your faith or whether it's just your morals or what it is. If you tell your kids what to believe, and when they ask why, you just say, because we do, or that's how we do things around here. That could be who you support as a team. That could be veganism. That could be anything like that. When they're then questioned about it in the future, they'll have no idea how to respond. Like, this is my dad did it or my mum did it. Whereas if you tell them why you believe what you believe, I just think it's more persuasive and it equips them better for life. And it also means they'll properly know why they don't believe it if they grow up not to believe it as well. Like, and I think that's where I would get to with that. Why don't you believe? And let's have a chat about it and things. And I would never ask them why they changed from Spurs. I just assume they were delirious.
Oh, amazing.
Just want to win something.
Yeah. Come on, Postecoglou.
Why'd you not support Bayern Munich? Well,
yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now we've had our fair like share of kind of, all right, it's time to say prayers. Now you pray. No, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And then it's like, come on, it's good to pray. And I don't want to force them to pray.
Yeah.
But also getting into that habit of praying and being thankful. That's one for me, just being thankful for everything that we have and,
Definitely.
Our family and stuff is really important to get into that habit. But I also don't want to be like, you pray now sort of thing. So it's a tricky balance. I'll always remember, it's Penn and Teller, the magicians.
Yeah.
I think it's Penn, the one that speaks. he was saying once, you know, how much, if you're a Christian and you believe that reality that you were talking about, and you don't tell someone about it,
Yeah.
how much do you dislike that person?
Yeah.
If you truly believe that there's a God and there's a heaven, how much do you dislike that person not to tell them about it?
Yeah.
And I just think, you know, for me, like you said, I believe that's the truth.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to know that truth, and, you know, everyone else.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's kind of, it's that thing, isn't it? You don't want to preach at your kids, but also you want to teach them what you believe is truth.
Definitely. And I think it is exactly that. It's so hard to like, I think that's true of anything. Like, when do you put your foot down, and when do you like lovingly like challenge, and when do you just out and out bribe? Like, we call it like reward, but it's like, I will give you this chocolate if you do this thing. It's like, it's literally bribery. And I think it is really hard with that. And like, yeah, our kids haven't. I think my daughter's more likely to be like, no. She does a thing when we pray with her. She's like, "Can you pray with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." But then I don't know what she's going to say. So we're both like, it's like she wants me to say it at the same time. I think she's trying to copy and learn. And I'm like, dear Jesus. She's like justifying me and everything. Like, can we go? Or she'll say something. And I'm like, can we go? Not school. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what you're going to say. Like, but yeah, it's funny. I had when I was an intern, actually, amazing moment when I was helping with the creche. I think he would have been 4 at the time. My godson, he was like top end of like creche just before he went off into like the older kids group. And they went round and did a prayer thing. And they were like, "Does anyone want to pray today?" And his hand was like straight up. And he was always like quite good. Pastor's son as well. So he kind of like knew his stuff. But he was also like cheeky. And he went, at one point, "Dear Jesus, thank you for making me." And all like the teachers were like, "Oh," and then he went, "Thank you for making me a robot." And like, we all laughed. It's one of those where it's like, when they say funny things in prayer as well, like that, and you're like,
yeah,
you don't want to be irreverent. Do you know what I mean? You don't want it to be like, well, we just mess around during prayer the whole time. Like, we never, like, prayer becomes like stand up, and like God's like, sorry, what's going on? But you also like know that with any relationship that like you want to have fun as well. And so like, I think that's the balance I find a bit difficult. The same with church. Like, how are your kids at church? Like, and how is your churches? Because I think we do it really well, but trying to have that balance of like, they're kids, so they're going to be mad at times, yet at the same time, not at all that it's like, shh, like I'm trying to listen. But there are times when like, do you know what I mean, there's some deep stuff. Like, you're praying for a family that are like, they've gone through something really tough. Someone's not very well or whatever. And it is an emotional moment. And you've got kids like, meow, or whatever. And it's like, you're trying to, like, how do you guys find that?
Oh, well, you're the pastor.
Oh, and this is so difficult because like when me and my wife were married, we are married now. Before we had my daughter, we were in quite a big church, and like they had loads of teams for kids, and like they had loads of different kids working on that sort of stuff. And I imagine in that environment, it's easier.
Yeah.
Like, it's already quite noisy. We moved like to Sheffield just as my daughter was born, and then I was leading a really small church. There was literally like 25 people in the church, and my daughter was literally the youngest one by far. And like, it was fine because she could make noise and everyone thought it was cute. But as it kind of grew, it was like a bit distracting of like, I'm trying to work here. But so the kids' work was at one point just my daughter.
Yeah, sure.
But she loves church. Like, so literally yesterday, she loves going. She loves the routine of it. She loves singing the songs and all that sort of stuff, and like learning to pray. She genuinely does love it. But it's because I'm in charge. It's easier to go, actually, we can just deal with noisy kids. It's fine. I imagine it's awkward when you're not and you can't make that decision.
Yeah.
No, it's not that easy.
Yeah. I think it's hard for church leaders as well to like get that balance, because not everyone has kids, not everyone likes kids and things. Like, you want to be a family at church, but at the same time, like, if you can't hear anything, like there are times where when we first moved, we didn't have the leaders for like a creche, so we moved up to be part of a church plant in Blackburn, and I was the youth pastor there, and it was great. But we were trying to like get the leaders, and so it got to a stage where like being in the service was like quite hard, because it was like being at home with my daughter, but there was nothing to entertain her. Things, and so it's trying to get that balance, isn't it? I think like
being at home but without any of the things you used to entertain.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and loads of people watching you.
yeah, and the less kids there are as well, as you were sharing then, like you can't even blame. It's like you're the only one potty training. Of course, that's my kid's poo on the floor. Like, it's not. I wouldn't have thought that was her. No, she never does anything like that. It's like definitely hers.
Amazing.
Oh, brilliant, John! Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
And sharing some brilliant stories with us.
I've really loved it.
How can people follow you, and how can people find you, and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, I'm John E.J. Reynolds, I think, on most platforms. So E.J., the letters in between, John Reynolds. I think if you go on my Instagram, there's like my links. So if you go on my Instagram and in my bio, there's like a link tree thing to all the links. But I think I'm that on pretty much everything. So yeah, if you search for that and you want to like watch some of our stuff, then yeah, that'd be amazing.
Smashing.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.